Welcome to the How to Feel Good podcast, the show that's focused on, you guessed it, feeling good. But what does that even mean? The world we live in is full of distractions. We've been disconnected from our true nature and led down a path of emotional turmoil, frustration, and never-ending hustle. With so much pressure to conform and perform, so many of us have no idea what it actually means to truly feel good. It's not as complicated as you might think. In fact, it's rather simple once you get into it. You just have to forget everything society taught you, detach from your mind and body, and become the conscious driver of your meat robot. I'm Jenn Garrett, and for the past 15 years, I've been studying the human mind, body, and soul at an incredibly deep and nerdy level. With this knowledge, I've completely transformed my own life, and am now on a mission to help others do just the same thing. So if you're ready to stop feeling bad and start feeling good, come join me. Hello, you beautiful humans, and welcome to the How to Feel Good podcast. Gosh, folks, it's been a minute since I recorded an episode. And actually, this is the very first episode where I'm on video. Oh gosh, see my arm wiggle there. Those of you listening to this on Spotify or iTunes or Amazon Music, I think Spotify and iTunes are the two most popular platforms that people are streaming this podcast on. But anyways, if you want to see my face and my arm wiggles when I gesture, you can head on over to my YouTube channel, which I'll put the link in the show notes. Or if you're already on YouTube, I'm like pointing at the same time. You're already here, so welcome. Gosh, this has been a long time in the making. I have wanted to record, start a YouTube channel for quite a while, and I just kept coming up with all sorts of excuses. Why not to, right? Like, there's so many reasons, there's so many barriers, and that's actually why the topic of today's episode is why we need to do hard things. Because you see, for a really long time, I just told myself that I wasn't capable of doing these things. And to be fair, my living situation for the last couple of years has been bananas. My gosh, folks, it is ridiculous, the cost of living these days. You millennials, and I'm like technically what is known as an exennial. Oh my God. You know, Generation X and millennials, because I was born in 1983. And we're like a micro generation from like 1979 to 1983, I think is when the end date, or maybe 84. Anyways, we were the generation that was like, grew up for part of our lives without technology. Like we didn't have the internet until I was like 13, I think. And we had like a family plan where we got like 10 hours a month with like the dial-up modem. It's like beep, boop, 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 boop. You know, like if you know, you know. My sister and I used to like get a pillow and put it over the modem when my parents were sleeping so that we could log onto the internet and chat with strangers in chat rooms like MSN or like ICQ. Anyways, I was part of that generation that grew up without technology, but then had it later on. But anyways, we're all under like a huge pressure, guys. Like our generations, like millennials, exennials, and really anybody at this point who's not a baby boomer, is feeling the crunch. Like, for me to be able to afford housing, like a 2-bedroom apartment that's safe, a car, a cell phone, and then like food choices that are not filled with poison and toxic fillers, I need to make like $35 an hour working 40 hours a week. And that isn't even realistic, because I can't really even work 40 hours a week as a mom, because having a child is a full-time job. Now, I'm very thankful at least that like, this is where the silver lining of co-parenting comes into play, wherein I only have her under my responsibility half of the time, but still, I still need to be able to afford her that half of the time. So I found myself in a really sticky situation a couple years ago. Like, I went through my very first dark night of the soul in like 2017, like end of 2017, early 2018. And at that time I was working in the fitness industry, and I had built myself like a fairly lucrative career. Like I was pretty successful. I had a full roster all the time. And I was also managing a CrossFit gym and working as a wellness coach for them as well. So I was making a good amount of money. But like when I started waking up to the energetic reality of the universe and started to accept myself unconditionally, I started to see through the facade of the fitness industry and found it to be so overwhelmingly superficial. It was like soul sucking, especially at the very end when I was working for that CrossFit gym. they were doing this diet bet challenge to gain their memberships. So they would have people come in and wager between, it started out at $500 and then it ended up being $600. So they would wager $500 or $600 that they could lose 6% body fat or 20 pounds in 6 weeks. Folks, this is a lot of weight to lose. It's like very difficult. So people were very stressed out. And I being like me being the general manager and the wellness coach was the person that everybody had to come to when they were having a hard time. So I was forced to be in a situation where like I personally wanted to tell everybody to fuck the diet. Like you're fine as you are and you'll actually lose weight faster and it'll stay off longer if you do it in a way that's actually adaptive for your body and not just like stressing yourself out to the point of like starvation and totally depressing your entire system by working out when you're exhausted. Anyways, so turning into a bit longer of a ramble than I meant to. But if you're a regular of this podcast, you're used to that at this point. So I'm just going to keep going. So anyways, that was really like the deal breaker for me, was having to give people advice that I didn't believe in. So I ended up quitting the fitness industry at the end of 2019, finally. And I downgraded my living situation to move in with this lady who was actually a member of the gym and ended up being a functional alcoholic who like wanted me to sit around and drink Palm Bays and commiserate about her ex-husband, who actually was a person that I thought was an interesting and respectful person. So it was difficult. Obviously that didn't work. And then what happened is that because I had given up my apartment, at that time, it was like a 3-bedroom apartment with an eat-in kitchen. I had a free laundry in the basement. I had a yard. I had a shed to put my bike in. And it was only $9.25 a month. Now, I know if some of you are not Canadian or living in Ontario, so you don't really have a reference as far as like your prices are probably different. But like now, that same apartment, like in the time that I was like living with that lady for a short period of time, and then because I had been renting for a couple years before that, the pricing for rentals went up like 100%. So that same apartment is now renting for $1,800 for the same apartment. So this is where I got screwed. So like the last couple years have been really difficult because I was working like minimum wage jobs, and minimum wage is $15 an hour here in Canada, or like it's close to that anyways. I was working for like a kombucha company and a restaurant, and funnily enough, both of the employers that I had worked for, both ended up calling me entitled because I said I couldn't work for $15 an hour. Yo, that is $20 less an hour. It's less than half what I need to make in order to survive like a meager, modest lifestyle. And they are calling me entitled. But like I am entitled in that case. And this is where shadow work really comes into play, because once you start to accept that people are going to think whatever they think about you, and also anything that anybody says about you is true. I am entitled. I do have a high opinion of myself, and I have a high opinion of my needs. I do believe that I deserve to make enough money to support myself, which is why I'm doing this shit, because I know that by following my passion and following my design and tapping into my unique gifts and sharing that with the world, that is how I'm going to be able to build a lucrative career around shit that I love, which is also the core of the business that I'm developing as well. So if you're interested in doing that, hit me up for some one-on-one coaching, because that's what I'm doing. But anyways, oh yeah, I didn't do my little ads. I've been doing like little promo ads at the beginning of the episode. Well, there's one of them. I'll just kind of like place them through the episode this week. I'm a little off my flow because it's been so long since I did it. My living situation, as I said, that's just why I was explaining the living situation, because it's been chaotic. Like it's actually really interesting for me even filming myself doing this, because most of the time I just like have this page of notes that I make per episode. And then it's been me like talking to, I was using this microphone at the beginning, but then I just started using the voice note recorder on my phone. So it'd be me like in my car, because it's the only quiet place I could find, like just looking at my notes and like ranting and being off in space. So I'm not really sure how this video format is going to translate, like how valuable it'll be, but at least it's an interesting exercise for me. And it's also challenging me to do something new, which is the whole topic of today's podcast. So anyways, that was a really big wind up to tell you like how I've gotten to the place where I'm at with my living situation. Now I'm living with my sister. Actually, I forgot to say this part. We conjoined our families. So she is a recently single mom as well. She's got 2 kids. So she is renovating her basement. So like she had an unfinished basement. So she's created a brand new apartment for me and my daughter here in her basement. And now we're like one big happy family, like helping each other out. So now I have space to do it. Although this is not even the ideal space either. Like I had planned, I have a green screen that actually Haley, my daughter, got for Christmas from one of my friends. And I'm going to play around with that and see if I can figure out how to like make myself in outer space and things like that. Or like once I get my room actually unpacked, I'm going to have like this beautiful spiritual aesthetic, like crystals and all that sort of stuff behind me. But if I waited for it to be perfect, it wouldn't be happening. And it's already been a month since I did this podcast. Because the other thing that happened to me, folks, is that I got COVID. I actually got that virus that everybody's been talking about for the past couple of years. And let me tell you, it was a time. Okay, I'd never been one to deny the existence of this virus. And was always, I was actually saying before I got it that I kind of wanted to get it so that I would have the antibodies. So I was like, got what I wanted. But I was definitely sick for like 10 days. Strangely enough, though, I do feel like it upgraded me. I'm very thankful for that experience. I feel like having the experience of that virus in my body and like sweating things out and having literally nothing, like being able to do nothing for like 10 days was liberating and like freed me. But anyways, that's not what I wanted to talk about today. That's just telling you why it's been a month since I did this podcast last. But here I am now, and I am endeavoring to do a hard thing that I've never done before. And I am also working on extinguishing my need for perfection, right? So that's the other thing. That's another major barrier as to why we don't do hard things, because we know, or like we're afraid of imperfection. We're like, we don't want to put out B+ work. We want everything to be an A+, right? Like, and let me tell you folks, nothing is ever going to be just an A+. Like everything is, you gotta work your way up. Sometimes people are good at stuff right away, right? But you never get to that point without trying and failing. Like nobody ever just succeeds. They're like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. And then they're like successful. Fuck no, that's not how it happens. Also, just FYI, this is the second time that I'm recording this because I had some issues with my phone storage. So last time I ended up dropping the F-bomb a lot through this episode. So I'm going to try to rein that in a little bit. But also, I mean, like, part of me gets a huge kick out of the juxtaposition of talking so intellectually and then also being like, fuck that. I just think it's so funny, right? Like, language has so much power. And when you're using it in that context. But anyways, so why is it that we create so many barriers? Why do we have such a hard time doing new things? Like, why did I have such a hard time setting myself up to start a YouTube channel? This has been something that I've been working on researching for over a year, and I'm just starting to do it now, right? But why is that, right? Part of it has to do actually with the same circumstances and beliefs that fueled the housing and financial issues that I've been dealing with for the past couple years. Now, I know this is something that people don't generally share like their mess, right? Like they don't want to talk about the things that they're vulnerable about, but I kind of see this process in this podcast and now the video version, the vlogcast, is that a word? Anyways, I kind of see this as documenting my glow up story because over the past couple years, I've made some massive progress in overcoming some pretty significant mental health and addiction issues, right? I legitimately love the shit out of myself now, folks. I've done so much shadow work. I've worked with these dark entities of myself, really looked at those aspects, and I've accepted the fact that I have just as much darkness as I do light, and that all of the criticism that I've received from people outside of myself rings true in some way. And by accepting that, I've really started to understand that I'm a whole and complete being just as I am. And I've loosened up, and I've stopped punishing myself in so many ways. I've also really adopted this neutral paradigm as far as things just being events, right? Like there's no good, there's no bad, there's just things that are happening. And by adopting that, that's given me a whole lot of freedom. Like I'm not just like swept away by these emotional roller coasters that happen when something bad happens to you and you take it personally or you like resist it, right? I've really learned how to sink into that. And by doing that, by improving my relationship with myself, my relationships with other people have drastically improved. I have like a very turbulent family history. Also a very turbulent interpersonal history, turbulent employment history. Like, I'm not a good employee. I'm very self-centered, right? This sort of thing. I'm entitled, all of that. Don't care about other people. Which is, like, that part's not, it's kind of funny because, like, People said I don't care about anybody but myself, but like when you care about yourself more than anything, that's how you actually care about other people. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is I've made a lot of progress, but there's still this area that is less than ideal, and that's my financial situation. And this has to do, sorry, my cat wants out of the room, go. This has to do with some beliefs that I have, some deep-seated beliefs that I have about my value, okay, my worthiness. I grew up in a family of baby boomers, like my baby boomer parents were conditioned to believe that money is the most important thing, that you have to trade everything for money, okay, so they show their love with money, right? My mom to this day still does this, like through the hardships that I've had, especially having COVID the last 2 weeks and not being able to clean houses the way that I was to make the ends meet. She's been helping me in that way, right? And I used to resent her a lot for it and not really accept it. But now I see that that's how she does it, right? But what this did to me as a child and then taught me as an adult is that my value is only based on how much money I make. And because I felt like I was valueless, I have blocked myself from making more money. And part of that is sabotaging myself from doing new things that are going to put me outside of my comfort zone and potentially make me vulnerable. Because there's kind of two aspects of this, right? Like there's these underlying beliefs about my value and my worthiness and how that relates to money. And then there's also this belief that I have that like the world is a hard place. It's never going to get easy. I might as well not even try. I might as well just lay down and die because everything's too difficult anyways, right? And then there is this other aspect, which was directly related to the fear of our mortality, right? We are programmed not to stick our necks out. We're programmed to fit in with the crowd because animals that stick their necks out and like make themselves known are typically the ones that become targeted to die, okay? So there's a confluence of factors affecting the barriers that I've created for myself from doing this hard thing that I've been endeavoring to do for over a friggin' year, right? It's just been so many reasons why I couldn't do it, but all of the reasons are stemming from these deep beliefs that I have about my value, my worthiness, the state of the world, how hard things are, and then the fear of being vulnerable by putting myself out there and saying things that maybe are not popular as far as the common narrative is concerned, right? I'm really putting myself out there as a witch, putting myself out there as a spiritual teacher, talking openly about spiritual and energetic concepts that some people still view as woo-woo, right? Like those sorts of things trigger our core like protection methods, right? That defense mechanism that we have to keep ourselves safe. Because remember, 90% of your behavior is coming from that basal ganglia. That's the reptilian complex. It literally is unconscious, no words, no feelings, wants you to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and save the most amount of energy possible, right? So by doing a new thing that one, grates against your belief systems, and two, puts you in danger of being vulnerable, right? Like you're putting yourself out there where you could get killed. That's like a big no-no to the basal ganglia. Both of those are like exactly what that whole mechanism fights against. And 90% of your behavior comes from that mechanism, right? The brain it only wants to do things that are familiar because it saves energy. If we were literally looking like in every day, if we were walking around just like processing everything as if it was brand new, we wouldn't have any energy left to do anything else. That is why confirmation bias, self-fulfilling prophecy, and schemas all exist. If you don't know what those things mean, go back and listen to some of my previous episodes, but it's essentially the concept that whatever you already think is what your brain is going to look for in the environment. Your brain, like two people can literally watch the same event happen and perceive it differently because of these pre-existing confirmation biases and cognitive biases that they have going on, right? Because I watch this and based on my previous experiences, I have an idea of how this is going to turn out. So my brain doesn't even tune into the actual stimuli that's really happening. It's just assuming. It's identifying like familiar characteristics about certain things, and it's just skipping over the details to make things easier for me to absorb and process, right? So when you've got a belief that you're not worthy or that things are really hard and you're never going to be successful anyways, you might as well just give up and save energy, that your brain is going to look to confirm that, right? That's why I've had all of these ridiculous issues with finding space and having tech issues, even actually the tech thing, like I've like arranged a trade with a guy who does social media stuff and audio and video editing. So I had a meeting with him just before I got sick with COVID and he showed me how to like do this. So I'm like recording it with this microphone and recording it on video, and he showed me how to use a program to split the audio from the video, how to edit the video, right? And then like 2 days later I came down with COVID. Now it's been 3 weeks and I haven't even done it yet. Right? But so my brain is always looking for ways to stall. My cat's coming in here again. It's creating these situations, or it's attuning to them because of these deep-seated beliefs, right? So part of the work when it comes to doing hard things is, one, understanding this process, right? Like it's not gonna just happen easily. It's not in your best interest evolutionarily to do things that are different. It's not in your best interest as an animal to do things that are new and hard, because they take more energy, because you're rewiring your brain and you're putting yourself in potentially dangerous to the brain, vulnerable situations, right? So you're going to meet resistance 100% of the time. And that's why we need to do the hard things, right? You can't just live your life following the same path as everybody else. You can't just, like, do you really want to just wake up every day, do the same thing, like have the same breakfast, go to a job you hate, trade your time for money, and the money isn't even enough for you to eat, to live, right? You have to work 2 jobs, or both you and your partner need to work full time, right? You come home, you make dinner, you watch TV, and you do it all over again. Like, is that really what you want to do for your rest of your life, folks? I sure as hell hope not. That is sad. That is not what we're here to do. It is literally soul sucking. Like, we are here to know ourselves, to understand ourselves, and to satisfy ourselves in our own unique way. Each individual human on this planet is here to experience everything that there is, from the good to the bad, because there really isn't any difference between the two. If we don't have bad things, you don't even know that the good things exist, right? We've just been brainwashed and indoctrinated into thinking that everything needs to be happy and positive all the time, which is kind of funny because the life that they're promoting for us is not fucking happy or good. It's so sad. This is why we have a huge epidemic of mental health issues. Depression and anxiety are not chemical imbalances, and I'm sorry if that triggers you, but I'm also not sorry, because here's the thing. I'm somebody who had clinical mental health issues, okay? I understand what it is to live with manic depression. I understand panic attacks. I understand anxiety that's so bad that you can't leave your house. I understand depression that's so bad that you want to fucking kill yourself, okay? I've been there. I've been medicated. I've had SSRIs. I've had a running prescription for benzos, right? Like the benzodiazepines, like Ativans, right? Because I had panic attacks that were so bad that I couldn't go to school, okay? I get that. But what I'm saying here is that it's not a chemical imbalance that happens naturally. Depression and anxiety are natural side effects to living in a society that is not designed for human life. Okay, the way that we are living is not natural. We are here to do things in connection to the earth and connection to ourselves. And by knowing ourselves and following our distinct paths, that is how you can overcome this shit, right? You have anxiety and depression because you're living in misalignment with your true nature. Now, listen, I'm getting a bit worked up about this. This is not the point of today's episode. But I wanted to make that point clear because... because this is why you need to do something different, okay? You're going to keep having anxiety and you're going to keep having depressive episodes if you keep living in a system that is not designed for you. So this is why we need to do hard things. Hard things, adversity in general, builds resilience and it builds strength. Okay, when you do something that's new, yes, it's hard and it takes a lot of energy, but then you build a new skill. And by building a new skill, you improve your self-efficacy or your belief in your ability to do things. And that empowers you to keep doing new things so that you can achieve a reality that is actually in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing here, okay? So now I'm going to talk a little bit, I've like really drilled into why it's hard to do hard things, right? Like we have a firm understanding of how the brain and the body work against us when it comes to doing a hard thing, right? Like it doesn't make sense for us to, as an animal, to do different things, because usually animals who do different things die. But we're humans, right? Like we have these advanced capabilities. We're not just animals. We do have these animalistic urges. And that's what happens when you just pay attention to your brain, or you're just being in your body. You're not like paying attention to your energetic self. You can get swept away by these patterns, right? But we're here to do more than that. We're here to overcome that and to experience the entirety of the human spectrum. So now that we understand that, I'm going to talk a bit about how adversity builds resilience, right? And then, so this is now going into why we need to do the hard things, okay? So we see evidence of adversity building resilience when you look at the physical body, right? So I worked as a personal trainer for 8 years, and I learned about the science of exercise and how to elicit certain effects in the body as a result of performing exercises at different tempos, different weights, and rep numbers, and then rest periods in between, okay? So the basic concept is like when you push your body beyond what it can handle, it comes back the next time prepared to do better, right? We see this in hypertrophy. Hypertrophy is the word for building muscle, right? This is between 8 and 12 reps, typically at like about 70% of your 1 rep max. So like 70% of your max strength is what you're working at here. And you rest about a minute to a minute and a half. I talk about all of this stuff in the episode on why you need to move your meat robot. So if you're interested in the specifics of that, I go through the whole thing. So if you're interested in that, go back and listen to that episode. But when you go do that, your body, you break down your muscles basically, and it builds more muscle. That's how you end up building muscle and getting bigger gains. That's how you get your gains. I don't even have any. It's been like a month since I worked out from being sick and everything. The gym's being closed here in Ontario too. But that's a topic for another episode. When you move up the scale to get into strength, what you're doing is you're lowering the number of reps and you're increasing the intensity. So you're going to do you're at like 90 to 100% of your 1 rep max. And that was actually my favorite part of training when I was working full time as a trainer. All of my clients wanted weight loss. Like everybody came in to train for weight loss, right? But doing a strength phase was actually my favorite, because it's really obvious that you're seeing results from what you're doing. You put somebody through a 6-week program where you're strategically maxing out their central nervous system by giving them these loads, right? Like calculating the weights and forcing them to do it till they exhaust themselves, essentially, right? Until they can't complete the reps. And you can see somebody gain 30% power in 6 weeks, right? And that is a direct response to adversity, right? You do a deadlift or a squat and you fail, right? Like you can't get the weight up. It's like the one time you can be really stoked to fail. Actually, you should be stoked to fail a lot of times, because failure is part of success and nobody ever just succeeds, as I said earlier. But anyways, by doing that, the next time, like when you come back to that exercise, your body and your brain are like, oh, wait a minute, last time I failed at this, so I better have more power. And that's exactly what happens. Adversity builds resilience and strength, okay? That's how that works in the physical sense. Now, it also works in your brain as well, right? So Hebb's law states that neurons that fire together wire together. So when you are forcing yourself to have new thought patterns, at the beginning, it takes a lot of energy. That's causing adversity to the mind. Okay, remember that analogy, like you're cutting a path through the woods for the first time. The path that you have had the same thoughts over and over and over again, that path is easy, it's clear, you can run down that shit, but it goes to the dump, right? The new path, you have to cut. There's fucking branches, you're getting scratched, there's spiders, there might be poison ivy. Your brain is like, what the heck are you doing? Stop it. Stop doing this, right? Because it's taking more energy and there's more risk and you're getting hurt, you're getting cut up, right? So the brain is telling you not to do it because it's taking more energy. But by forcing yourself to do it, pushing yourself through the hard thing, you're rewiring your brain. You're physically moving those neurons closer to each other so that the electromagnetic signals that hop from one synapse to the next, those little spindly neurons have like an end that's receiving and an end that's giving, right? So the connection the neurons actually move closer to each other so that electro signal can go through faster, right? So mental adversity, forcing yourself to think new thoughts or to think creatively, think outside of the box, think about something that you've never done before, figure out how to do something that you've never done before, and all the necessary steps. I feel like everything that I've learned how to do, like even just doing this podcast, like the audio version only, that was a huge barrier for me to try and figure out. I am not a tech savvy person. Wait a minute, let me rephrase that because I'm really working on my NLP, my neuro-linguistic programming. The words that we talk about ourselves cast spells, folks. When you say that you're not a tech-oriented person, what do you think happens? I'll give you a clue. I literally just talked about it for like 20 minutes. Okay? If I say I'm not a tech person, my brain is going to look to confirm that in the evidence of the existence that I'm having, right? So I'm going to have tech issues. I'm going to have struggles with getting it set up, right? So I'm going to now say, instead of I'm not a tech-oriented person, I'm somebody who's learning how to use technology to my advantage. Okay? But by forcing yourself to do those new things. Oh, wait, I was going to say something about how everything that I've done had such a huge learning curve. It's like to do one thing, I've had to figure out like 17 other fucking steps first, right? And this is normally how you get overwhelmed and don't do the things, right? But if you break it down and you just do one step at a time and force yourself to celebrate it and open yourself up with positive emotions that make you expansive, that's going to create neural pathways that are more conducive to doing the new things. And before you know it, it's easier to do the new things, right? Because your adversity, the adversity that you're intentionally causing your mind and your brain by thinking a new thing or figuring out a new thing, is creating resilience and strengthen you in the long run because you're rewiring your brain to eventually make it easier. But if you don't push yourself through that uncomfortable period, that sticky period, the period where there's all that friction, then you never get to that point. You just end up doing the same things over and over again. And when you're living as just a unconscious being, like an unconscious animal, just reacting to your environment, that makes sense evolutionarily. But as I said, and I will keep friggin' saying it. I almost said fucking again. As I've said and will continue to say, folks, we are here for more than that. We are not here to just lay down and fucking die. Like that is not the existence that we're here for, okay? So that's physically and mentally, right? Like whether you're causing adversity to your body or you're causing adversity to your mind, intentional, controlled adversity where you're pushing yourself through a difficult thing makes you stronger and it gives you a wider skill set, a bigger toolbox to deal with when you come up to like the next issue that happens, okay? So that's why we need to do it, okay? The problem is, though, that we face some pretty significant and very real barriers when it comes to the body and the mind being in a stress response, okay? I've spoken to this issue of, oh my God, it's starting to fall apart. It's been a little while since I did this. And it's kind of weird filming myself too. It feels a little odd. Usually I'm just like ranting at my paper. But anyways, okay. So I scared my cat when I did that. Okay, so when your body is in stress response, your sympathetic nervous system is activated. Recall that there's two branches of the autonomic or central nervous system. There's the sympathetic, sympathetic fight or flight, and the parasympathetic rest and digest. These two are mutually exclusive. They cannot be on at the same time. Your sympathetic nervous system is an adaptive system that helps you to identify predators and get away from them or fight them, right? However you're feisty of a being you are, whatever the threat is, okay? So this gives you increased muscle tension, increased respiration, increased heart rate, and a laser focus on just like scanning your environment to perceive the threats or like a getaway type of idea. You literally have cognitive blinders on when your stress response is activated, okay? Now, this is normally adaptive in animals, like a mouse needs this to get away from a cat, for example, but then when the cat is gone, the mouse doesn't keep stressing out about it, right? Because it doesn't have a neocortex. Our fancy human brain, the neocortex, right? This is where we have the ability to think about thinking, language, all of our executive functions, all of that fancy stuff. But it also gives us the ability to trigger our stress response with a thought or a memory or seeing something that resembles a trigger, right? And then the way that the brain works, because of the efficiencies of the schemas and all of that, we can just bing back and forth and all over the place as far as that stress response is concerned. And we end up being in sympathetic response all of the time. This makes it really hard to do anything because you're using so much energy. Your body's basically vibrating all of the time, ready to fight a fucking bear. Okay, so you're in an energy deficit and your blinders are on all the time. The other thing that causes this, not just the neocortex that's responsible for this, but there's a lot of environmental stimuli or toxins that are triggering our body, because the other pieces are emotions, right? The emotions are the electromagnetic hormonal chemical response to your environment. They are literally a go-between between your brain and the environment. So if your body is triggered by pesticides, herbicides, chemical fillers, fluoridated water, chlorine in the water, all sorts of pharmaceuticals in the water, birth control. Have you ever wondered why little girls are getting their periods so much earlier and why little boys can't grow body hair? It's because they're all drinking fucking estrogen, because we're taking birth control and peeing it into the water system and nothing is being done to take it out. I trained a water engineer when I was working as a personal trainer at Good Life, and she told me that, and it was terrifying. She's like, we could take it out, but it just costs too much money. So we're just drinking everybody else's pharmaceuticals that they've processed through their body and peed out into the water system. So don't drink tap water. But also don't drink bottled water that's stored in a plastic bottle, because then you're absorbing that shit from the bottle as well, right? So our food and our water are poisoned. Our air is poisoned. It's well known that they're spraying aluminum and all sorts of shit into the air to control weather. And then just like environmental pollutants too, right? Like looking at, I was born in Sarnia, Ontario, which is right next door to the Chemical Valley. Like that's literally what they call it. The rates of cancer in that area are so high, right? Because the whole area is fucking polluted, right? So we're living in an environment that's poison, essentially, right? Not trying to scare you, right? You can do things to make it better, like choosing natural products. Don't put like chemical products on your skin. Don't use, like, laundry detergent is a neurotoxin, just FYI. Like, it's, so get the natural stuff, right? Cleaning products, same deal. Anything with a fragrance is pretty toxic as well. So these are things that you can do. Now I'm getting into the action items, but this is all stuff I've talked about before. It shouldn't be new, right? But I'm just reiterating it because people, you really need to understand that this is a huge part of why you can't get out of these patterns. If you're anxious and depressed, one of the first things you should do is look at what are the products that you're using. What is the food that you're ingesting? What are you putting on your skin? What are you drinking? What are you breathing? Okay? Because all of those things, that it adds up, okay? And we end up having this toxic load in our bodies that triggers our emotions to tell the brain that something is wrong. When your body is stressed out, it communicates to the brain to look for threats. And then the brain, looking for threats, fucking finds it. Whatever you're looking for, you will find, folks, okay? The brain is a beautiful machine. It's very good at what it does. So this is why we continue to have interpersonal issues, employment issues, family issues, financial issues, relationship issues, right? Even traffic and like road rage and like just difficulties as far as that, like frustrating things. This happens as a direct result of our bodies being triggered, telling our minds that something is wrong, and the mind looking for something to be wrong. Confirmation bias. The mind wants to confirm what it already thinks, so it's getting a signal that something's wrong. And also, you've got cognitive blinders on that can allow you only to perceive threats, so it makes it even worse, right? So this is why it's such a huge part of overcoming this and making it easier for you to do the hard things is clearing the static in your body and your environment. And I've fully just gone into one of the action items, so this is going to be a little bit disjointed. Forgive me. I'll reiterate this. Sure, okay? So in order for you to effectively reprogram your brain and push yourself into doing things that are difficult so you can build resilience and adversity, resilience and strength, not adversity causes, oh my God, it's falling apart, folks. So Maybe I'll just go into it now. That's basically it. Just saying basically it's impossible to do that when you're in stress response. So you need to do everything that you can to get yourself out of stress response. Now, I have a brand new initiative called the Feel Good Academy. I've been teasing about this a little bit here and there. Initially, it was going to be an app, but we figured out that the app building program was just a bit more complicated than we're looking at taking on right now. And there were some issues with the support as far as that's concerned. So we're going to do an old-fashioned course on Kajabi with an online community. And it's a 6-week anti-challenge that's dropping February 22nd. We're going to go through, I've brought 2 other professionals on board with me because it was just too big of a topic for me to do by myself. So I've got myself doing brain science, psychology, spiritualism, behaviorism, and nutrition and environmental stuff like that. I've got a personal trainer, Lee Snyder. He's also a barefoot exercise specialist who's doing all the movement stuff. And then his partner, Kelsey Rivard, is our yogi / breathwork facilitator. So we're coming at this from body, mind, and soul. Essentially, you've got 3 experts coming together with over 30 years of experience studying the human mind, body, and soul. We're collaborating, combining our expertise to give you a 6-week anti-challenge with the goal of feeling good and clearing the static in your body. We also just developed a 5-day Jumpstart, which is a free challenge. I don't like the word challenge. It's just such an easy thing to say, but we're trying to really avoid that because it's not a challenge. We're not trying to make this something that's hard. We're not adding things on to the stuff you have to do already. We're trying to take away from that, right? We're trying to teach you how to calm your body down and get yourself out of stress response so that you can then open yourself up, remove those cognitive blinders, and see a whole new world of potential and creativity and genius and joy and bliss and all of that fun stuff that you just can't perceive when you're in stress response, okay? So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, I'll put the link to the early bird list. Actually, by the time I get this episode out, the 5-day challenge should be up and running as well. Fuck, the 5-day Jumpstart. I keep saying challenge. I gotta like do some neuro-linguistic programming around challenge and not using that word. But anyways, if that sounds like something that you're into, look in the show notes. There'll be something there for you to sign up for. But if you're not interested in that, you still want to learn how to clear the static in your body, all the stuff that I just said about environmental toxins is a huge part of it. Also, the other thing to add into that is factory farmed meat. Okay, I'm not vegan anymore. I did fully plant-based for like 2 years, and then my body really wanted to eat meat again, but it did not want to eat factory farm meat because here's the thing. Animals raised in cages and treated like things instead of living beings are raised in fear. They're literally scared their entire lives. They're not living their full potential. They're stressed out, and then they're being put onto a truck and they're driven on the highway to a slaughterhouse. Those animals know what's happening, okay? They're stressed out the entire time. And that fear is being embedded in their meat. Just like our emotions hang out in our body and trigger our mind, the same thing happens to animals, folks. They have the limbic system, which is the mammalian brain, which is all of the emotional regulation and cause and effect. They know what's going down and they're traumatized, okay? And then we eat their meat, which has the vibration of fear and trauma, okay? What do you think happens when you eat meat that's traumatized, folks? Your body gets, you get traumatized, okay? And I can tell you that anecdotally, this is a study size of 1, because I'm the only one that I can base this off of. But in my experiences of eating meat after not eating it for a long time, there's been a few times that I've eaten factory farm stuff, and I've had massive anxiety afterwards. I ate some pork. I won't eat pork ever again, even happy stuff, but it caused me a huge amount of anxiety. So anyways, now I'm like back in that place again. My body's like, no. Okay, so what you're putting in your body, what you're putting on your body, what you're breathing, these are all important things to consider when you're trying to clear the static in your body. The other things you can do are a regular breathwork exercise, just even paying attention to how you're breathing. I'm at a point now where I just like audibly exhale and sigh anywhere that I am when I feel that tension, because your 2 branches of the central nervous system can't be on at the same time. Slow breathing is part of the parasympathetic. Fast breathing is part of the sympathetic, right? So like you're like normally. So if you calm yourself down and have long, slow breathing, you can't be in stress response, okay? So our resident breathwork facilitator, Kelsey, has a lot to say about this, especially in the 5-day Jumpstart. You get 5 different breaths to try, okay? And that's free, so you might as well sign up for it. So breathing is one thing. Grounding yourself to the earth, like it's kind of hard here in Canada right now because there's snow on the ground, right? But spending time in nature, spending time at the beach where the water and like the shore, natural running water is really good for us as well. Touching your feet to the earth, salt baths, and relaxing yourself in that way, and then moving your body as well. So depending on your energetic type, if you, as far as human design is concerned, if you're a manifesting generator, a generator, or a manifestor, you have a higher need for intense exercise. Projectors and reflectors, you still need to move your body, but like more yoga, intuitive based stuff would be better for you guys, okay? So those are some of the major things that you can do to reduce the static in your body. Oh yeah, and less screen time. Less time holding a radioactive device that's sending Wi-Fi through everything, okay? Those are the things you can do to clear the static in your body, okay? When you clear the static in your body, it frees up cognitive space for you to do difficult things. You're already working against your brain and your body. Just even if you were living in a perfect environment where you're completely free of all these toxins, you would still have a hard time changing your behavior because the brain doesn't want to do anything different. You're only making it so much harder on yourself by not paying attention to all the accumulation of all this stuff into your body and your brain. So that's step 1, is making sure that you clear the static in your body before you start trying to do this. The other thing you can do too, I forgot to mention here, just looking at my notes, is hot and cold therapy. So cold therapy builds resilience. It's another hard thing that you can do that's difficult in the moment, but it increases your resilience and your ability to defend yourself. Like your immune system increases, your energy increases. The barefoot hiking too is another thing that I started doing last spring and did it all through the whole season until it started getting too snowy. But it sucked at the beginning. It was really hard. My feet like hurt. But by experiencing that, and I made my daughter do it too, and she was so whiny about it, but we talked about how by putting yourself through intentional pain like that and relaxing into it, not meeting the pain with resistance, but relaxing and softening yourself into it, it increases your pain tolerance. By the end of the summer, I was able to walk on full-on rocks and have no issues at all, right? But you have to force yourself to do it. So those are a couple of things that just in the examples there that you can do to decrease the static in your body and also increase your resilience in general, okay? So, the whole point of this, like why we're doing this, is because this is really what like the human experience is all about. Like we are here to overcome obstacles. We're not here to sit in a fucking cubicle on a computer all day doing a job that makes you want to shoot your brains out. Okay, that is not what you're here for. You're not here to trade all of your time to go to school for 30 years, 20 years, whatever. Maybe some people go to school for 30 years, right? You're not here to go to school for our decades and then enter a workforce and trade your fucking soul for money that doesn't even get you happiness, right? Even the people who make a lot of money, they just have more expenses, right? And there's no direct correlation between money and happiness. There's a threshold where like if your needs are not met, then money affects your happiness. But once your basic needs are met, beyond that, there's no relationship between money and happiness, okay? That is not what we're here for. We're here to get messy. We're here to experience things. We're here to overcome shit and build resiliency. We're here to do hard things and get stronger as a result of them. We're here to experience literally everything, right? From the good to the bad, because neither of those things actually have any meaning, okay? That's a value judgment that's been given to us to control us and keep us small and keep us thinking an if then, like, if only I did this thing, then I'll be happy, or I can't really admit that I have these negative traits because then I won't be accepted. I'm going to die, right? Like this is all bullshit that's just been, I mean, part of it is evolutionary, right? Like we needed these things early on, but now we're at a point where we should be breaking free of this, but the systems that are encapsulating us are keeping us stuck and small and sick, right? Because then we're just endlessly consuming. We're mindlessly distracted. We're numbing ourselves. We're going for those maladaptive coping mechanisms because the pain of existence is so great. I'm like, I'm clapping now. I'm getting real worked up here, folks. Hopefully that didn't come through the audio too bad. I'll try not to clap. But this is really important, okay? This gets me so fired up because we've been lied to. This is not what we're here to do. We're literally here to experience everything. We're here to have challenges and overcome them. Things are supposed to be hard sometimes. You have to learn how to force yourself to do the hard things. And you can't even look at it like it's a hard thing that you don't want to be doing, right? And that's the first thing that I'm going to give you as far as an action item. Why are you doing the hard thing? What is the frame from which you are viewing this hard thing? Are you feeling like you need to do it because like you have to? Oh my God, I didn't say that very well, but you know what I mean, right? Like if you're trying to force yourself to do something and you don't really believe that you can do it, or you don't really believe that it's going to work, it's not going to. Okay. If you're coming at it from a perspective of like resentment or feeling, basically anything that you feel like you don't want to do or feel like you shoulds or have tos are basically what I'm getting at here, okay? So you need to really think about why it is that you're doing what you're doing. Everything that I just said, the last like 5 minutes of ranting is a good example of what you need to feel. You need to have that burning passion inside you. You need to adopt a neutral paradigm through which to view the world. You need to see things as just things, okay? When you have to, like when I have to start a business cleaning houses to pay the bills because I can't train people and I don't have a minimum wage jobs, don't pay enough income for me to survive on, right? Like I could be really upset about that. I could really feel sad for myself by doing that, but I don't. I use that time to pray and say mantras and be present, right? I exercise my body, I exercise my mind, and I make $35 an hour while I'm doing it, right? So that's exactly it. You have to reframe your why and appreciate everything that you're doing as something that is part of the journey. The process is the reward. Okay, it's not it's not like once you are successful, you'll be happy. You have to be happy now. You have to be happy doing this shit, the menial shit, the hard things, the things that you have to learn 17 different fucking steps and have all these stupid barriers, right? That is part of the experience. You have to appreciate it as what it is, okay? So that's step number 1, reframe your why. Step number 2 is to break your big, huge goal into manageable micro goals, okay? Baby steps, honey. That's what we're working for. We want to take some little tiny baby steps because they're easier for your brain to process. It's so much easier for me to just be like, okay, I'm just doing this one thing. I'm going to film this today. I'm not going to worry about editing it. I'm not going to be worrying about like the SEO. I'm not going to worry about the art or any of the things that I need to do, all the show notes. I'm just going to film it right now. That's what I'm focused on, okay? Breaking it down into baby steps. And then I'm going to congratulate myself when I do it. I'm going to celebrate the heck out of the fact that I've taken initiative and I've done the thing, because celebrating makes you expansive. You can't celebrate in stress response. It doesn't work. You're closed off. You're constricted. Okay. You're small. You're tight. You're safe. Right. When you're celebrating, you're expansive and you're open and you're vulnerable and you're actively cultivating positive emotions that are going to elevate your experience and make it more likely for you to continue doing the hard things in those little tiny baby steps. Okay. So that's step number 2. Number 3. Oh, I kind of said number 4 at the same time. I always write these out and then end up saying them in different orders. Anywho. Step number 3 is accept the discomfort and soften into it. It's going to be uncomfortable. You can't avoid it. I've just spent 45 minutes, 50 minutes talking about how uncomfortable it is and why. Okay, you should have a firm understanding of the fact that it's going to be difficult and there's reason for it to be difficult, and you don't need to be frustrated that it's difficult. It just is the way it is. So fucking accept it and soften into it. When you meet resistance with more resistance, like resistance that's a tight, like small action compact thing, you meet that with another tight, small action compact thing. It doesn't work. Right? The law of 3 is that you need action, reception, and incubation, right? So you have to be receptive. You have to surrender. You have to loosen yourself up. When I was learning how to walk on rocks in the summertime, it hurt so much more when I tensed my foot up. If I was actively breathing and imagining my feet melting over the rocks, you didn't even feel it. Same thing with cold exposure. If you go into cold water and you're like, oh, I scared my cat. If you go into cold water and you're all to like tighten up, that experience is much worse than if you go into cold water and you relax and you fight that stress response and you just like soften into it. Okay? Accept adversity as a necessary part of the experience. Accept the challenge, accept the discomfort, and remove yourself from the emotional cycle that gets tied to it and soften into it. Now, number 4 was celebrate. I already kind of said this already though, so I'm not really going to reiterate it, but celebration is huge, and acknowledging the hard thing and looking back at what you've done and what you've already accomplished, right? Because we tend to think it's a lot easier for us to think negatively, because thinking negatively keeps us small and safe, right? Like the brain wants you to stay in a tiny ball and live so that you can keep having babies. That's what the brain does. It's here to keep us reproducing and not dying, essentially. That's all, right? So the brain wants that. So if you allow your brain, if you don't let your brain celebrate and like it keeps thinking about it as being like a hard thing, you're just pushing yourself through. This is exactly why I quit the fitness industry, because it was ridiculous seeing people beating themselves up to achieve a result, right? Like, and then they get the result and it doesn't feel good. And then because of the way that they got there, by restricting and beating themselves up, when they get to the goal, they don't keep going with the behaviors and they end up gaining the weight back. Like I saw that happen a million times, so many times, right? Because they make the process uncomfortable in a bad way, and then they're not motivated to keep doing it. So if you can change your perspective, celebrate what you're doing, reframe it as a positive thing to experience adversity, then you make the whole process so much more enjoyable and it's way easier to continue going. I'm at a point now, I never have to micromanage myself with my addictions. Like I don't ever want to drink. I don't want to, like I've been celibate, don't want to go do random hookups, right? Because I know now that it feels worse to do that stuff in the long run, right? Like I'm not using it as a coping mechanism anymore because I celebrate the heck out of what I am doing. I don't need to artificially inseminate myself. That's kind of a weird way of saying that. I don't need to artificially create these pleasure sources in my life because my actual life is just pleasurable the way it is, right? The process is the reward. Well, my human design, like the theme of my incarnation cross is limitation. It's literally challenges on challenges, right? So like, I just need to accept that I'm never going to stop having challenges. And it's not a bad thing because every time I have a challenge, I grow from that shit. Okay. And step number 5 is essentially what I just said. It's just repeat until extinguished. Okay. You're going to keep having challenges. You're going to keep being triggered. You're going to keep experiencing adversity. And there's nothing that you can do about it, really. Like, you can't change it. Everything that's happening is predestined. You're in the neutrino stream. Like, you're just reacting to the patterns that are happening all around you, right? Everything is predestined. You can't change that, but you can change how you react to it and your perception of it, right? So if you can adopt a different paradigm and really see the challenges that you're coming up against as something that are going to help you grow, just like how I got COVID and that shit like upgraded me. That virus kicked my ass for 10 days, but I feel like I'm a different person as a result of it. I shed so much. And now I've got antibodies, right? Like that was a challenging experience that has made me stronger in the long run. Same with all of the other stuff that I've talked about in this episode. So I feel like at this point, it's probably time to wrap it up. We're at like 55 minutes. Yeah, that's a good long one. My phone's probably going to cap out soon too. Anyways, so that's all I have to say to you today, folks. I hope that you feel empowered to do a hard thing, okay? Please tell me about it. I would love to get your feedback. I love getting messages telling me that you love the podcast. I love when you tell me that you love me, folks, because it's external gratification. I need that. Like, no, legit though, it feels nice to know that people are seeing results or like having shifts happen in their lives as a result of this. Plus, it helps me to promote the podcast. I'm also still running a contest to get my reviews and my ratings up on Apple and Spotify. So if you do any of those, so like Apple, Spotify, or you write me a message telling me what you like about the podcast, I will enter you in. Each one of those things will get you an separate entry in the draw. And I'm going to draw that at the end of February, the same day that the Feel Good Academy is going to launch. So that's it for today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love each and every one of you so much. And now go and do a hard thing. And I hope you feel good. and have fun while you're doing it. Bye.